we are, of course, continuing in the book of James. Let's go ahead and let's see what you guys remember from last week. So I'll give you a minute or two to think about these. Just some quick questions for you guys to answer based off that last week's lesson. Number one, name two alternative translations of the word trials. We get from the Greek word hierasmos. And James lists specifically one reason we undergo trials from verses 2 and 3 of the first chapter. And the word also discusses at least 9 other reasons. And see if you can remember some of those. I'll come back in just a minute and give you a chance to yell out some answers out as the Fernandez family gets settled in. As Morgan Friend both Google's the answers. I can't blame her because I was looking at the city book, right?
I'm just trying to see the YouTube video. The subtitles, it's all wrong.
So, does anyone remember that the word trials, the pierasmos, actually it's translated as 3 different words in the New Testament can be used interchangeably for trials? Does anyone remember what the other words we often see that translated as? So, very commonly, you'll see the word test when we are tested or we are tempted. So, it's very common that when we say we're undergoing trials, we're also undergoing temptations or we're undergoing testing. It comes from the word used to prove the worthiness of gold, to prove the worthiness of metals. And in verses 2 and 3 of James chapter 1, what does he tell us the purpose of undergoing trials is? To produce endurance or patience. This brings about endurance or patience, the ability to withstand those things. That's why that's fantastic. All right, and then there were some other reasons that we discussed on the back half of class of why we have to go trials. Does anybody remember any of those? Just yell them out for me. Why would God put us through trials? To refine us and to work on us and for personal growth, right? So to grow us, that is one of the reasons, definitely. Correction. For discipline, okay. To help us grow our faith. Yeah, those are all correct answers. Any others we remember? Pride. To keep us from pride, to help us keep us humble, right? Yep, that's one of them. So here's the list. To bring God glory, to discipline us, keep us from pride, to build and prove our faith, to cause spiritual growth, to teach obedience, to equip us to comfort others. We go through trials, remember, so that we can help others through their trials. To prove the reality of Christ within us. These are the last few are the ones that are just a little bit harder because they're really kind of complicated. But to prove the reality of Christ within us, right? If Christ undergoes trials, so that we also have to go through trials, go through with him, to call us to eternal and heavenly hope, and to serve as a testimony to angels. So that is what we covered last week. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing the testing of your faith produces endurance. So with that, we'll go ahead and prepare ourselves to get ready for this week's lesson. Let's go ahead and open in prayer. Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this time that we spend together delving into your word and learning about practical Christianity, practical belief, and how we apply it to our lives on a daily basis. How do we express our faith in our daily living, Lord? And we're thankful for the opportunity to grow, that you're going to use this lesson and this word. We pray in each of our lives. Pray that you make my teaching purposeful and truthful this morning, that I don't bend or distort your word at all. And I pray that everyone here is ministered to as you see fit. So we pray in the name of your Son, Christ Jesus. Amen. So I told you a couple of weeks ago that Dr. Missler had a really neat way of kind of dividing up the book of James, the 5 chapters, being about faith, but that they would need faith this way. We're still in chapter 1, which is faith. And so chapter 1 is still about how we can overcome things in our lives with our faith. Remember that the purpose of our faith in the context of James is how we prove our salvation. All right. So faith, the actions that we have are not what bring us to salvation, but it's how our salvation is demonstrated to the world around us. And this chapter on trials and overcoming is often the biggest revelator to people around you of who you are and the reality of Christ in you. When they see how you respond under duress, when they see you undergoing things and how you respond to those things, that you don't respond to those things in the way that the world does, that is oftentimes the biggest witness to them of the reality of Christ within you. Right, so we're still in this chapter of victorious faith. So this morning we are undergoing verses 4 through 12 in the first chapter. Pastor said when he saw that on the screen that was very ambitious because last week we spent the entire lesson on 2 verses. Now we're doing 8 verses. So this, give me just a second here. All right. And so this reads, if you follow along with me, and let endurance or patience have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously, without reproach, and it will be given to him. He must ask in faith without any doubting. The one who doubts is like the surf of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For that person ought not to expect that he will receive anything from the Lord, being a double-minded man, unstable in all of his ways. Now the brother or sister of humble circumstances is to glory in his high position, but the rich person is to glory in his humiliation. It's like flowering the grass, he will pass away. The sun rises with its scorching heat, withers the grass, the flower falls off, and the beauty of its appearance is destroyed, so also the rich person in the midst of his pursuits will die out. Blessed is the man who perseveres in the trial, for once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him. James's purpose in this passage really goes back to Matthew 5, starting verse 10 and 11 and 12. So if somebody would turn there very quick. Question is, are we going to bet against Brooklyn today? Because Brooklyn seems to be speedster when it gets the Bible verses. All right, looks like London or Morgan got there first. Verses 10, 11, and 12, please.
Lord, script for your family, my way through constant and surely smell. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
11, 10, 11, and 12.
Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before.
All right, so blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who are persecuted, blessed are those who are persecuted for the name of Christ, right? We're going to find a lot actually going back to Matthew chapter 5 throughout the entire epistle of James. The entire epistle of James is going to take us back to chapter 5 of Matthew quite a bit. So you're going to see me calling it there pretty much every week, because you could maybe even say that the epistle of James might be the most thorough exposition of the Sermon on the Mountain, or at least the first part of the Sermon on the Mount. That maybe the first exposition of that. This is really kind of what James does. James is going to take these concepts that Christ taught way back on the Sermon on the Mount, and he's going to show us that trials are really an essential method that the Lord uses to develop that Christian character in us. All of those lists of things that the all of the beatitudes, right? That Jesus gives on the Sermon on the Mount. James is actually going to show us how those develop Christian character within us. That perfected Christian character that we are seeking after, that Jesus would have liked to have seen in each one of us, is is going to be shown through James's epistle. And James is going to give us, starting with verse 2 or 3 that we did last week. James is going to give us 5 keys to persevere through them, beginning with that what we just saw there in Matthew chapter 5, right? So what did we cover last week? Well, we said that we should count things when we undergo trials. We should count it all joy. We should count it all joy, right? So the first thing that we could have to have the right Christian character, uh, so that we can overcome our trials, is a joyful attitude. And then in verse 3 tells us understanding that going through these trials is going to produce in us patience or endurance. So the second thing that we have to have, the first thing we have to have is have a joyful attitude. All right, the Lord's putting me through something. He's teaching me something now. He's going to do something great in my life for His glory. Got to understand why. That's okay. But I understand that not only that, not only is God going to be glorified, I understand that He's going to make me stronger through this. He's going to make me wiser through this. That I'm going to come out from the other end with something greater than what I wanted. Right? So the two things that we've already learned about so far last week is going. We need to have a joyful attitude when we have trials, and I think that's the hardest one, right? Lord, why am I going through this? That's the fleshly response. Really? Again? And I think most of us start with that every time. Wait, Lord, and then you have to ask them, okay, just give me the right attitude here, Lord. Just give me the patience. Because then we're already moving on to the second step, which is the understanding mind. At that point, we've understood. Wait. I know I have to understand the Lord is going to do something in me in this. So those are 2 of the 5 things that He's going to teach us through trials. That if we want our trials to have a victory and purpose, then we have to start with those 2 things. We're going to go over the other 3 things today, starting in verse 4. So in verse 4, it tells us, let endurance or let patience, depending on the translation, have its perfect result in you, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. This is a pretty accurately translated, if you're looking at King James, if you're looking at NIV, if you're looking at ESV or NASV. It's a pretty accurate translation. There's not a whole lot of fluff in this. The Greek says, the Greek word for perfect here is teleios. The trick with this is that this is a common translation. The word perfect here is commonly translation. However, other versions of the word might have it as complete, because that's probably a slightly better word. You can use the word perfect here, but really the word here is complete, right? So the word is complete. It's not moral perfection. It's not okay. If I endure this trial, I'm going to be perfect at the end. No, the idea is you're going to be more complete. You're going to be more fulfilled. So it's more about completion than perfection. The idea is that you're going to be a more developed and more complete person rather than a perfect person. All right, so that's actually the word that we're going for here. The word patience we already went over last week, which is patience or perseverance, right? Hupomone. And so that's the word that we're often seeing there. But what we're looking for is the Christian maturity and Christian completeness here, rather than actual perfection. Holokleros is another word that's there. The word, so you can be perfect and complete. He's using 2 words here back to back to kind of emphasize. So both words are there. So both the word teleois is there and the word holokleros is there, both meaning to be complete or whole or entire. So one word means to be complete, one complete and perfect. The other word means to be whole or entire. And then he reinforces the phrase by saying that we are lacking in nothing. But really of importance here is the imperative. Remember, we talked about in the very first session that James is giving imperatives. You must do this. You must do this, right? Rather than, hey, this is a suggestion. It's more of a commandment. And so the commandment here is to let endurance have its result. Let this happen to you. So so James is actually giving a commandment here that you need to allow the trial to work in your life. You need to allow this trial to do what it's going to do in you. So the third thing that we are adding to our list of things, the joyful attitude and the understanding mind, is to add to that a submissive will. You have to submit to the trial that the Lord is putting you through. You know, what does Christ tell Paul when he reveals himself to him? It's kind of hard for you to kick against it. Why are you doing this? Why are you kicking against this so hard? You know, allow me to work in your life. So you have to have a submissive will in order for the trial to do its work within you, or it's putting you through. And as humans, we don't like that. You know, our natural point is to find the easiest way out of something. I always thought it was funny that Bill Gates said, you know, I look to hire the laziest workers that can. You know, and he's like, wait a minute, you run one of the most successful companies on the planet and you want to look for the most lazy people to work for you. He says, yeah, that's because they're gonna find the fastest solution to every problem because they don't want to find the easiest route out of the problem. So they're gonna find the most efficient solution to every problem. And I was like, well, that's a different way of thinking of things. But that's our nature as human beings. It's like we see a problem and we want to find the easiest way out of that problem. How can I avoid this? You know, what's the quickest way for me to get out of this? But you know, when it comes to solving our problems, sometimes when it comes to the way that the Lord wants us to solve our problems, sometimes the only way out of that storm is to go through the storm. You know, if we can see the storm moving on the horizon, it's like, yeah, maybe I'm not going to drive down that road. I'll go over there. And you think to yourself, yeah, but that's going to take me 8 hours out of the way. Sometimes the only way through is literally to go through it, right? We got to go through the storm. God promises that He's going to see His faithful, you know, those who are going to be faithful and stay true to the Lord. He promises He's going to see them through the storm, um, without them being broken, right? He's going to be there. He's told us that He's going to be the shelter and protection. We have to have faith in that. We have to have trust. We have to submit to that. Okay, Lord, you say that you're never going to leave me. You're never going to forsake me. So I'm going to trust that you're going to do this. That's what's required is the faith and trust that the Lord is going to take us through that. And rather than running it, look, Jonah had a choice, right? Or did he? You know, it was like, hey, I want you to go do this. No, I'm not going to go do that. I'm going to go do this other thing over here. And at the end of the day, the Lord still got his leg. Oh, you're gonna go do that other thing? How about you spend a couple of days in the belly of the fish? You know? So um Jonah did not have the faith to trust in what the Lord was going to do in it, right? He did not have the trust that the Lord was going to have his will and the food be protected. He was more scared of the people of Nineveh than he was of the Lord. You know, and so we saw how that worked out. God will not create his perfect and complete result in us unless we allow him to do so. Someone hit up, if you have hit up so far, Jeremiah 48, um, starting in verse 11. We'll go. Luckily, Jeremiah is sort of in the middle, just past the middle. Isaiah is the middle of your Bible. If you just past the middle, you should be able to find Jeremiah 48, and we'll start in verse 11. No, that's chapter 50. What am I looking at? 48, starting in verse. Oh yeah, just chapter 11. It's just verse 11. If whoever's got that, go ahead and read it out.
Therefore, this is what the Lord says: I will bring them into disaster. They cannot escape, although they cry out to me, I will listen to them. Oh no, sorry. I was to Jeremiah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry?
Moab has been released.
Yes, we're beginning with Moab.
Moab has risen up ease from his youth, and he has settled on his ease, and has not been emptied from because neither has he gone into captivity. Therefore his case remained in him, and his sin is not changed.
So here Jeremiah describes the nation of Moab as a bottle of wine that's never been disturbed, never been shaken up, never been emptied out, hasn't been refined, right? never submitted itself to being refined or purified. And so, more to live the life of easiness says has lived the youth that is at ease. If we live a comfortable life, and we're never shaken up, and we're never disturbed, we're never refined, we're never purified, we never have the chance to be made into something better. And Jeremiah uses an example of describing exactly why we need to go those trials. We need to submit to that. Why do we need to submit to that? Because that's how we grow. That's how we get stronger. That's how we get better. The Lord is using those things to make us better, and we see that when those things don't happen, the Lord is not approved of that. If you continue reading chapter 48 of Jeremiah, you see that the Lord is through Jeremiah is going to bring judgment on Moab. They lived a life of easiness and have never been disturbed. And rather than being made strong and being made refined, they're going to be judged and burned out for that instead. And so, probably the biggest example of that is what we've been listening to in Sunday morning sermons most of the summer. Probably the biggest single trial endured is best summarized in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 8 through 22, in which we watch what happened with Abraham, right? The life of that's basically the biography of Abraham right there. Verses 8 through 22 in Hebrews is the biography of Abraham, and talking about how he had to, go through these different as he was moving from Chaldea down to the promised land, how he had to pass through various nations, and he didn't always handle those trials well, how he had to undergo the trial of trusting that the Lord was going to deliver his son from Sarah, and not through Sarah's handmaiden, how then he had to take Abraham up on how to take Isaac up on the mountain and trust that the Lord was going to raise raise him from the dead because he was going to have to kill him. That imagine being the only person in the country that the Lord makes him apparent to. He says, by the way, you're going to move and you're going to become the father of another. That's probably the single biggest. I mean, there's plenty of trials in the Old Testament, but you really consider how much faith Abraham had to have. How much faith did Abraham have to believe that? Leave his homeland to do all that. And then what do we see? The Lord rewarded him in the end, and not even in his own lifetime, because Abraham didn't get to see his nation rebuilt. At least not with earthly eyes. Not with earthly eyes. You talk about the kind of faith, those trials. There was a faith that was not rewarded on earth at all. Probably have to make a single most statement of faith that we ever saw. And he didn't argue, at least not that we see, right? Moses, the way that Moses wrote it, Abraham didn't argue with God. He didn't ask for an explanation. He didn't go seeking out pagan, aside from the Sarah Hagar thing, perhaps. Although I think, if I remember correctly, does that come? I think that comes from Hagar more. That comes from Sarah more than it does from Abraham, right? It was Sarah's idea. I don't remember.
Well, yeah.
That's the way it was written.
She's the one that presented the opportunity.
Yeah, the rather paganistic, fleshly opportunity. So, but we imagine being Abraham. You finally have the son that was promised to you. Okay, all right, Lord, you said we were going to have a son, and we had a son from Sarah, and not from Abraham. To the point where the Lord says, "Take your son, your only son," because he doesn't even acknowledge Ishmael as a son. And take him up on the mountain over there and kill him. We don't see any questioning from Abraham at that point. He just does it. What kind of faith is it? I mean, I'm speaking to two families here with many children. Each of you with only one son. And the Lord came to you right now and said, take your only son. I can't even relate to that, right? Closest thing I have to a daughter is Jaden. She's not even my own flesh and blood. I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to take Jaden up on a mountain. Dark. It's like, wow, that's big. That's big. And we say, oh, I just have to have more faith. Man, I don't think anybody has faith the way that Abraham had faith. There's just no way. There's just no way. And it's this same unreserved, unconditional faith. And we say that Abraham believed and it was accounted to him as righteousness. That's the kind of faith that gets accounted to you as righteousness. Wow. You know, that's the kind of faith that we're talking about right there. It's like we have to submit to God's will. Abraham was completely, for the most part, mostly completely, kind of perfectly submissive. He took his time. He wasn't perfect. He took his time. He says, get out of your father's way and go down to this country. And it took him something like 20 years to do it, and then he didn't trust. He goes, oh, it's my sister, not my wife. So he wasn't perfect. But when it came down to it, when the brass tacks were, when the chips were against the wall, all the metaphors, he was faithful. That's what accounted to him as righteousness. Let's continue. Verse 5. If any of you lacks wisdom, so when we get into these trials and we don't know what to do, right? When we get into these tough situations, when God's putting us through the storm, and it says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously without reproach. It will be given to him. Again, this is another pretty accurate translation. It's another imperative here. Let him ask. He's not James giving you a suggestion here. It's an imperative, an order, right? Sophia leipo is if you're destitute of wisdom, if you're deficient, you're completely devoid of the wisdom of how to endure your trial. Okay, and Sophia is the word wisdom. So if you need your daughter Sophia, you need your daughter wisdom. She better get good grades in school.
And she better.
And she better. As an educator for the last 16 years of my life, I'm telling you, don't name your sons angels and don't name your daughters patience or help. Because they will disappoint you every time. Hopefully Sophia has not been disappointing you guys with her wisdom. Sophia is the Greek word for wisdom. So alteo is the Greek word for ask or to make a request, and theos is God. So pretty accurate. It says, if you're lacking in wisdom, ask God. Ask God. It says didomi pas haplos, which is that he will give all. Here's one place where I'm not sure if the translations are 100% clear. I'm not saying they're inaccurate, but the Greek translation here is who gives all entirely, bountifully, who gives all. So if you lack wisdom, ask the Lord who gives all generously, all right, who gives all bountifully. And often in our Bibles is translated who gives to all, who will give to anyone who asks. If you are a God's child and you ask him, he will give to you generously. But the way that the syntax works here could also mean that he gives all wisdom generously. Okay, so if you ask him, he will give you all the wisdom that you require generously. So this is one where I think the translation in our Bible is the best we can do with it, probably, but it might be just depending on the syntax here. It just means he gives all wisdom generously and without reproach, right? Without really, what he's saying is that without rebuking you. Oh, you're asking me for wisdom? We've all had the teacher like, why are you asking me a dumb question? Right? It's like if we go to the Lord and ask for wisdom, he's like, didn't I already tell you? Haven't you been reading my Bible? We've all had that teacher like, didn't you read the chapter? That's not how the Lord responds when we ask him for wisdom. He might guide us to his word, right? He might, well, let's open the Bible here and see what it says, right? But the Lord is not going to, treat us poorly for asking him for help. Ask him for help, ask him for wisdom, and he's going to provide you with that wisdom. If you ask honestly and truthfully, if you ask, he's going to provide you with that wisdom, and he's not going to do it in such a way to make you feel ashamed for asking. I'll admit to having been that teacher once in a while, but I try not to, tell my kids all the time, there's no such thing as stupid questions, only stupid people. And the kids stare at me for a second, and then they laugh, and then they get, yeah. If you had said that to my child, I'd say it with a smile. The kids laugh. Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing. Is it, he's our father, right? What does Christ tell us? What father gives when the child asks for a loaf of bread, we hand them spoon. It's the same response here. This is kind of related to that in that sense that if we ask the Lord for wisdom, He'll provide it for us. We just have to and we said it. That's why do we undergo trials? To strengthen our spiritual growth. Sometimes he's putting us through things to draw us closer to him again. And sometimes the only way he can get us to come back to his word, to come back to seeking his wisdom, come back to seeking him, to rely on him, is to put us through something. So that we do go to him for the answers. That's the reality of it. It's and he's gonna not renounce us or rebuke us for those things. He's just gonna put us through this trial so that we can come to him, and that wisdom's gonna be. The faith that we're seeking is not going to be built on the way that we feel. It's going to be built on a deeper understanding of him. It's going to be deeper understanding of his word, right? If we want to have that stronger faith, that revealed faith, we have to seek him. We have to seek his word, and putting us through trials is what's going to make it happen. And that's what's going to make it happen. So we have to ask him for wisdom. If one of you would turn to Proverbs chapter 3, and then if somebody else would jump over to Matthew chapter 7, we'll see this in action. We'll see that the Lord is really supposed to be the source of our wisdom, right? We'll see this throughout the word that the Lord is the source of our wisdom. Proverbs chapter 3, starting in verse 5 all the way to verse 8. Somebody go ahead and jump in on that for us.
As to the Lord with all your heart, you will be navigating by. You know your ways without strength, you will make the best way. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body, nourishment to your bones.
That's right. Okay. So the Lord is the source of our wisdom. The Lord is what's going to bring us understanding, not the wisdom of the world. So if we just turn to him, he's going to bring us the understanding we need to undergo those trials. He's going to bring us the resources that we need. The knowledgeable resources to endure those things. We have to put all of our faith and trust in him. He's the source of wisdom. I do like how it says at the end, fear the Lord and turn away from evil, because I want to say the beginning of chapter 3 starts with the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? Understanding who the Lord is. That's where wisdom starts. Understanding the Lord. We say fear the Lord. It's not just being scared of, he's God. We should be scared of him. But it's also respecting who he is, understanding who he is. That's the beginning of wisdom. I'll go ahead and read this section from Job 28, starting in verse 12. It's a pretty big chunk. And Job brings about the same revelation of where we're supposed to find our understanding, where we're supposed to find our wisdom. Job says, where can wisdom be found? Where is the place of understanding? Mankind does not know its value, nor is it found in the land of the living. The depths of the ocean say it's not within me. The sea says it's not within me. Pure gold cannot be given in exchange for it. No silver can be weighed as a price. Cannot be valued as the gold of Ophir, precious onyx, or in the sapphire. Gold or glass cannot contain it or equal it, nor can it be exchanged for articles of precious metals. Coral and crystal are not mentioned. The acquisition of wisdom is more valuable than pearls. He compares wisdom to all of these precious things and says, and none of these things even comes close to matching the value of wisdom. The topaz of Cush cannot equal it, nor can it be valued in pure gold. And where does wisdom come from? And then finally, after Job talks about how important wisdom is and how it cannot be bought with any of these precious things, he says, where does wisdom come from? Where is this place of understanding? It is hidden from the eyes of every living creature, concealed from the birds of the sky. Abaddon and Death say with our ears, we have not heard a report of it. God understands its way. God understands what wisdom is, and he knows its place. For God looks to the ends of the earth. He sees everything under the heavens. When he imparted the weight of the wind and he assessed the waters by measure, he made a limit for the rain and a course for the thunderbolt. He saw it. He declared it. He established it. Searched it out. And to mankind he said, behold the fear of the Lord. That is wisdom. To turn away from evil is understanding. And we actually see through both Proverbs and Job that it is described by the authors of those books that the Lord created the earth through his wisdom. The wisdom of the Lord is how he created the earth. And this is a short demonstration of that right now. All of the things of the earth, the oceans, the thunder, the lightning, The mountains, they're created through his wisdom. And Job spells it out right here. Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, to turn away from evil and understand. And then Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 through 12. Who found that? Verses 7 through 11, or 7 through 12.
Ask, and it shall be given you, seek, and you shall find, knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone who asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Or what man is there of you, whom, if his son ask bread, will he give him a stone? Or if he ask a fish, will he give him a serpent? If ye then, being evil, know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your Father which is in heaven give good things to them that ask?
So even Jesus said it. Ask, just ask. You know, and you know, we talk about it. We should ask for the things that the Lord wants to ask for. Well, He wants you to ask for wisdom. He wants us to ask for wisdom. Okay, these are good things. He does not want you to ask Him for the Ferrari. Okay, that is not what these verses about. Asking will be given unto you. Lord, I really want that Ferrari. That's not what He's going to give you. Lord, give me wisdom. Okay, I'll do that. You as parents, same thing, right? When your daughter asks for that Jeep Comanche, when you don't even have a driver's license yet, the parent is going to say, ask for something else. Oh, sorry, wrong Jeep. Oh, okay. All right.
Ask for wisdom, and then you'll know the answer.
Yeah.
First,
Yeah,
you gotta have a Jeep.
you ask for wisdom first. You won't even have to ask for the Jeep because you already be wise enough to know the answers. So, there it is. What James says, it's all reinforced throughout the word. We know where wisdom is, and we know we're supposed to ask for it. Okay, continuing on in James, verse 6. It says, now, this is interesting here what James tells us here. He says, but he must ask in faith without any doubting. Okay, first he says, ask for wisdom, but then James says, but he must ask in faith without any doubting. For the one who doubts is like the surf of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. So he puts a warning here. Okay, you need to get through this trial. Ask for wisdom, for the Lord gives generously to all who ask, but you must ask without doubting. Lord, give me the wisdom to endure this. Yeah, but the Lord's not going to, if you go in with the wrong attitude here, if you go in that not believing He's going to ask, that He's going to give you that wisdom, well, if you're already doubting, then why would the Lord reward that? You have to go in with all faith, right? And this is a pretty accurate translation here. The Greek words, there's alteo again, which is to ask, and pistis, which we saw back in verse 2 and 3, the word for faith. Medias, dicarino, ask with not doubting, or with the doubting of nothing. So the word here is without question. Ask without question. So don't question that the Lord is going to give you the wisdom that you're asking for. Okay, and then the second half of this phrase here, he says, the one who doubts, the doubter. It's actually the word for the doubter here is like the raging sea. So we translate that as the waves of the sea tossed by the wind. And so there's this accurate translation. If you doubt, when you ask the Lord for wisdom and you doubt it, you're not going to be given that wisdom. You need to have a believing heart. Your heart has to be completely believing that the Lord is going to give you the wisdom that you ask for. If you go in asking without believing that the Lord is going to give you that wisdom, then He's not going to reward that. So the fourth of our 5 things that you need in order to be victorious in your trials, you have to have a believing heart. Start off with that joyful attitude. All right, Lord, you're going to do something. You're going to make me better through this. And I'm telling you, like the starting of this next school year, it's hard for me, but I'm trying to work on something. Lord, just gonna have faith. I got to go in. You know, it's hard to get up in the morning and think, yeah, this is gonna be a good year. I have to tell myself it's not gonna be a good year, but for good reasons. It's not gonna be a good year, but so that the Lord can make me better. It's all right. You know, that joyful attitude, because I understand. We're going in with that understanding mind. I'm going to submit to it. I'm going to acknowledge that I have to allow the Lord to do His work, and I have to believe that He's going to equip me with the faith and the knowledge to go through that. I have to believe. I have to believe that the Lord is when you ask Him for that wisdom and you ask Him for the knowledge and the strength and patience to go through these things. You have to believe that He's going to give it to you, even when you're on your last. You know, as the rope is slowly unraveling and coming apart, and you're standing on that last strand, you have to put all your faith in Him. You have to believe, because you know it's. You know, we go back to that same phrase. Abraham believed, and it was accounted to him as righteousness. Our, it is our faith in Him is where you know. Habakkuk 2:4, right? We are justified by our faith. We're justified by our faith. So we have to put everything into that faith. In verses 7 and 8, he gets a little bit grouchy with it here. You know, he kind of comes down on some parts. It says, that man not to expect that he will receive anything from the Lord, being a double-minded man and stable in his ways. So if you don't believe, this is the man who doubts, right? He says in verse 6, he says, you're like the surf of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. And if that's you, he says, then you ought to expect not to receive anything. Being double-minded, being unstable. If you're not on a firm foundation, if you're not stable, then the Lord's not going to reward you with that wisdom. If you're going to be casted around and tossed to and fro, then what's the point, right? So again, a fairly accurate translation here. You should not expect if you're not going to stand firm on the Word of God, on the truth of God, on the belief of God, then how can you expect the Lord to reward you with the wisdom that comes from it? Because that's not going to, it's going to be worthless to you at that point. So it's not going to, you're not going to receive any wisdom from that, because if you're going to doubt the wisdom that He gives you, if you're already doubting whether the Lord's going to give you wisdom, when the Lord gives you the wisdom, what are you going to do with that? You're going to doubt it. Well, maybe I should go see what it says over here in the Book of Mormon. Maybe I should look at some of these writings here in the Torah. Maybe I should ask my New Age friend how she's meditating to understand these things. You're just gonna get. He says, you already said you're gonna get tossed to and fro, right? You're double-minded like that. That's exactly what's gonna happen. You're gonna get thrown around between all of these earthly ideas, all these fleshly ideas. You know, I really like how it's written, and the last part of that is like, it says it's going to be you're double-minded and stable in all of your ways. He describes that as being the actual words here is you're turbulent in all of your paths. You're the road you're taking is actually turbulent. You know, you're not on the path to anything stable. You know, you're on a slippery road that's going to collapse at any given moment. So it's one of those things. Do you want to add to that?
Running after every wind of doctrine.
Yeah, you know, that's exactly right. That's Timothy, right? Or is that Titus? Yeah, Timothy. Where it says, yeah, you just chase after every doctrine of the wind. That's just what are you supposed to get at? You've got to stand firm on the Word of God. That's where your stability comes to. And if you don't put all your belief and faith into that, then whatever wisdom the Lord gives you is pointless anyways, because you're going to doubt that. You're not going to believe it. Continuing on, verse 9, he says, but the brother of humble circles, he's kind of actually starting on a new section here. We're kind of getting set up for the next section. He says, as you're undergoing these trials, the brother of humble circumstances is to glory in their high position, and the rich man is to glory in his humiliation, because like flowering the grass, he will pass away. There's, some stuff here. The Adelphos, being the brother here, the brother who is modest, the brother who is lowly or poor, that is what tekinos means, should glory in his high position, should boast or glory in his heavenliness. Another way to describe that word, that puspos, which is the word for high position, is heavenliness, right? So this goes back to blessed are the poor in spirit, they're gonna inherit the kingdom of heaven, right? those who are humble will be glorified, right? So those who are humble, uh, remember that they will be glorified. You are humble if you're undergoing trials, when you're undergoing something. Remember that you're going to be glorified. You're already thinking to yourself, man, I've already got a terrible life, and this is what I'm going through right now. Be patient. Remember, the Lord's going to glorify you. If you're already glorified here on earth, if you're a rich man is glorious humiliation. Well, the trial is here to humiliate. Remember, we said that, right? One of the reasons for trials is so the Lord can bring us back. Remember, oh, you put all your trust in earthly riches. And how much is that worth to you now? The Lord provides everything. Reminds us who we are. It reminds if we happen to live a very privileged life, and I'll be honest with you guys, I have to remind myself that very commonly that as a single man in his 40s with a master's degree, and teachers are the ones who complain the most about teachers not getting paid all that well, right? And there are certainly, especially after coming out of the pandemic, there are a lot of people going, brother, I didn't know how bad you had it until I watched my kids at home. And of course, you guys know because both of you homeschool your kids. You know how hard it is to teach children. It is. Now imagine teaching 390, right? You know, but not having to. I don't get to say, you know what? I'm going to take away your Xbox. I have to rely on the parents to do all this. So I know that my job is hard and maybe I should be paid better. But under the circumstances, not having children, most of my colleagues who have spouses and children, I'm like, yeah, you probably ought to be paid more because trying to make house payments, car payments, buy clothes for all of your children, feed all of your children, this is probably not quite enough to get that done. As a bachelor, I get to enjoy. I feel pretty rich. I'll be honest. As a bachelor, I'm living a good life. Um, every time the Lord puts me through something, I'm going, yeah, you're reminding me that I can't rely on that paycheck. You're reminding me that, you know, having a new car or being able to have nice things and spend money on nice things because I can do those things. I feel very privileged. And the Lord reminds me of just how privileged I am sometimes. He's got to humble me. He's got to put me in my place. Because if I didn't, my head would just get way too big. So I have to look at those moments where the Lord reminds me just who I am and that all of this stuff, what isn't that what it is? It's just stuff. What do we do with the money for? We just get more stuff. And then we look into our garage and go, when did I get all this stuff? What does it work? You know? So the Lord finds some ways to remind us about that this is worth nothing. All your earthly riches are pointless. And those are good moments. Those are blessed. Those are moments because what is all of it? It's flowering grass that's just going to burn. It's just going to wither. All of this stuff is just going to be passing away, right? So when we encounter these things, all of these things are to bring to us a humble spirit. At the end of the day, we come in with a joyful attitude, understanding that the trials are going to bring out something better in us. We submit to those trials, believing that the wisdom that He's going to give us is going to allow us to grow in that, and then the humility to understand the Lord is going to do His work. We have to come into this trials with humility. Okay, the Lord's putting me in this for a reason because He's God, I'm not. That humble spirit is the last thing that we need to understand. The last thing that we have to have to really allow the Lord's trials to work in us. He's going to get His work done in us. The question is it going to be hard or is it going to be easy? Are we going to kick against the ropes or are we going to submit in humility and allow the Lord's work to be doing through us? James talks about pride. Even the most destitute Christian can have a little bit of pride in them, the right kind of pride, knowing that, hey, I'm a child of the King. Some of us, the modern church puts a little bit too much of this. Hey, don't you know? I don't know. I think people mean well, but when I see, it's no longer bumper stickers now. We have window stickers, right? With rear windshield, people put stickers on the rear, and we see them. I'm a princess because I'm a daughter of the King. And young ladies who are in this room, one of the reasons that your parents have pulled you out of the modern school system. This is the modern school system, and I say this as a teacher in the modern school system. Is they want you to believe that you are a queen who can have it all, and you are sacred claim on this world. And there is nothing more repulsive to a man of God who comes across a woman who thinks she's a princess. And again, I see that window sticker. I'm a princess because I'm a daughter of the king. I get what you're saying, but there are way too women in the world today. It's like, I'm a princess. I deserve to be treated like a princess because that's what was taught them to be. And no man likes that. No man likes like, oh, you're a princess. You want to be catered to? No, it's not what men are looking for. They're not going to treat you like a princess. So don't get that princessy attitude. But in a sense, that is what James is saying in verses 9 and 10 there. He's like, hey, you are blessed by the Lord. So even if you're a humble person, even if blessed are the poor in spirit, right? That's Matthew 5, verse 3. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. And you can believe in that. You can trust in that. That's a good thing. Don't get a big head about it. And that's my problem with that bumper sticker. That's what wrong with that. Okay, yes, that's not what Jesus meant with that beatitude. All right. So we should have some what is comfort. I think really what you should look for in that is comfort. Hey, you know what? I don't have a lot of money. I'm barely making my bills. I'm living a really humble life. But I know I'm in the Father's hands. I know that when I'm called home, I'm being called home to a heavenly mansion. I think that's about comfort, right? That's comfort is what it is. It's not so that we can get on high hopes about it, right? So that pride that he gives us there, that's what that's about. We're poor to the world, but we're rich to God. And if we're rich to the world, oftentimes that means we're poor to God. So we have to remember that as we're preparing these things. So that humility, we those of us who are well off and we've been blessed with earthly things, we should rejoice in our humiliation. That's the other side of that. We should rejoice in our humiliation because it reminds us of the worthlessness of those earthly riches. Those earthly riches mean nothing when the trials come through. All the money in the world doesn't fix it when a family member dies. Doesn't matter how rich you are. When your mother dies, your heart's broken, and that Ferrari is not going to comfort you in that. Sorry, but isn't that how the earthly? They'll look to their earthly things to bring them comfort in their lives and find them to be empty and hollow pursuits. All right, so James, back to James, verse 11 says, "The sun rises," again talking to relying on when we're in trials and we rely on our earthly riches. He says, "The sun rises with a scorching heat and withers the grass. Its flower falls off, and the beauty of its appearance is destroyed. So also the rich person in the midst of his pursuits will die out." This is another pretty accurate translation here. You can see Helios being the sun, rising up. The word calson here, we just translated it as a scorching, a scorching heat withers the grass. That's actually, the calson is a Greek word specifically describing a very specific east wind. It's an east summer wind that would come in and kill the crops called the Eurus. So it's a very specific wind here. So the sun rises and brings in literally a wind that comes in and kills crops. And that's what he's talking about, where it withers the grass, it shrivels and dries out the grass. And these are the same words that he used back in verse 10 to describe riches, the withering of dry grass here. The same words. And then talks about how it kills the beauty of the flora and fauna here. This wind comes, the trials will come through and just kill all the worth. The worthiness of your riches become worthless because all of that stuff just becomes. Doesn't matter how beautiful your house is. Doesn't matter how wonderful your life is. The trial will come in, upend all of that. It will ruin all of that. And so the person who's depending on their riches, right? They're in the midst of their pursuits. It's interesting how that's translated in English here. It's a good translation. It's not exactly accurate word for word, but the idea here is that because it's a business, the rich person who is on a business journey. When we saw rich people during New Testament years, traveling, the reason they were travel is to go work on the investments, right? Let me let me take all of my riches. I'm going to buy these goods and go to this other place over here and sell them, and because I know they're worth more over here. So James describes it as a business, the rich man in his business journey. The Porea is it's not just any sort of a journey; it's a journey specifically for gaining profit in the act of pursuing profit. The rich man, if they're undergoing trials and they're going to put all their faith in pursuing more profit, they're just gonna die away. They're just gonna wither. They're gonna fade. That's if you approach your trials by just relying on your earthly things rather than relying on the wisdom of the Lord, it's not going to end well for you. It doesn't, you know, those by relying on your riches, those things don't draw God closer to you. You know, if you're the richest person in the world and you get cancer, how does getting another mansion help with that cancer? You know, how does adding a few more beautiful women to your harem uh, 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 of kept women soothe the pain of leukemia? It doesn't. You know, all of your earthly possessions will mean nothing. And that's isn't that spelled out in the book of Job? Job was a wealthy man, lost everything, including his health, and the whole book is him complaining about it and his friends not being able to help. Right? Isn't that what Ecclesiastes is? I did everything. I was the richest man on earth. I did everything, and at the end of the day, I'm gonna die just like the poorest guy. Those two books kind of spell it out that these trials are going to bring you to nothing. It doesn't matter how rich you are, you can't rely on those things at all. So, what really is, what's the purpose here? You know, what is James trying to teach us? You know, why we're going to undergo these trials. We have these reasons. What is the purpose for what we're doing? You guys have no fun whatsoever.
I can't see. You can't
So you guys sit in a place where you can't see. It's a dolphin. It's a dolphin. Because I'm asking you, what is the purpose? Okay, he tells us in verse 12. He tells us in verse 12. He sums it all up nicely in verse 12. He says, James says, blessed is the man who perseveres under trial. For once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him. Okay? So Makarios is blessed in the word. And that's the same word that Jesus used in all of those Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5. Blessed is the man, right? It's the exact same phrasing that Jesus used. James uses here. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial. Okay? Because once you do, you will be approved. Once you have been approved, right? This is not just, oh, you finished the trial, now you get to be happy. It's that deeper, more profound inner joy and satisfaction having come out of the other side of the storm. And those who persevere under these trials, you will have relinquished your trust in the Lord here. It says you will take up this crown. The crown that's described here is not the crown of royalty, it's the victor's crown for finishing a race. It's also the same crown that Paul talks about when he writes about the victor's crown. And the crown of life, so that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Right? And it's pretty well spelled out there. Look, this is not if you'll turn with me real quick to 1 Peter chapter 1. It's really close to James. It's a nice part. 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 6 and 7, he reinforces this. It says, in this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you've been distressed by various trials, that the proof of your faith, same thing, that you come out of the other side having proved your faith, more precious than gold, which is perishable, even through the tested fire, may be found to result in the praise and glory and honor, the revelation of Jesus Christ. Right? So this brings us to greater glory, proves the truth of Christ, right? And that's what it is to be approved. That's what it is to receive that crown, right? To understand that being faithful under perseverance proves our love for God. It is the proof of what it is. Right? So once again, those are our 5 things: a joyful attitude, an understanding mind, a submissive will, a believing heart, and a humble spirit. Those are the 5 things that James gives us. If we present those every time that we are presented with a trial, every time that the storm appears on the horizon, we know that we have to go through it. If we approach it this way, then suddenly our whole outlook changes, and suddenly we can persevere. We can do it, right? But we do it through the Lord's help, right? We do it, um, with the way that James gives us. He equips us, and the Lord will be glorified, and our faith will be renewed. So what it's all about. Questions, concerns, complaints, dangers, psoriasis, rash, athletes. Okay? Brother Fernie, would you close us in prayer?
As we thank you for this day, God, allowing us again to come into this place as one about be able to fellowship, God, and hear your word be taught over them. Thank you for the word brought this morning. You just ask that to get to bury it into our hearts, Father, in the way that we need. When we see those storms come, Father, that we know that we have just come our way that's going to make our faith strong, be able to push us through that. All things of this life. We thank you for the various trials that you allow us to go through. And we thank you for the trials that are ahead of us. But we know that you will find us. We thank you for all things you've done, all things you're doing, and all things you're going to do. I pray for the service today, for the worship, as with Saul, centered on guests in your name, Jesus.